Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today's organization spotlight is on Daniel Lee's gift. Here is what the founder, Abigail, had to say.
Hi, my name is Abigail Astle, and I am the founder and CEO of Daniel Lee's Gift. This nonprofit exists to share the burden of funeral and medical expenses by providing financial support to families who have experienced the heartache of a miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss. This vision was born out of my own loss of my son in 2020. His name was Daniel Lee, and he was born at 22 weeks gestation. And after I lost him, I didn't realize that I would be getting such a large bill for a baby I didn't get to keep, as you are usually in shock after you lose a baby. And it just was the last thing that was on my mind. And so I tried to find resources, and I only found a handful across the U.S. to help pay for medical bills. And so I decided that this was a big need in our country. So I created a nonprofit at the beginning of this year, and we just launched towards the end of this year. And so we are new, and so far we have helped one family, and our next payout is going to be in January, where we already have 2 families lined up to help them with their medical bills. So yeah, it really just, I remember it when I received some payments, it really just helped relieve a burden that I didn't really realize that I was carrying, having to pay a medical bill every month for, again, a baby I didn't get to keep. It just was a huge burden. And so I received 2 different payments from 2 different nonprofits in 2020. And I just didn't realize how much of a burden it was, and how it really just gave me a moment of relief in, a lifetime of, living with loss in your life. So we want to just help other families just experience even just a moment of relief, and, just that they have support from other families who have experienced loss in this capacity. So yeah, that's what Daniel Lee's Gift is all about.
Thank you so much for sharing about your amazing organization with us. This is such a needed thing for so many in the loss community, and you are making such a big impact. Today I am talking with Tianna. She lost her first pregnancy at 6 months. This, along with her struggles with PCOS-related infertility, weight, and mental health, led her to create Love Served Warm. She now helps other women facing similar challenges by helping them lose weight and get pregnant naturally so they can achieve what she once thought was impossible. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Tianna. Tianna, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Tianna. As you mentioned, I'm a master's prepared registered nurse. I'm a PCOS hormone coach, and I'm founder of Love Serve Warm. I help busy professional women with PCOS lose weight and have the pregnancy of their dreams.
So, what got you into that line?
So thank you for asking. So I had a situation where very young I became a mom to my sister. My mom had a very traumatic pregnancy due to PCOS, where she kind of like spiraled and struggled with her mental health. And right very early I became a mom, and I went to nursing school because I understood that bringing my sister home would require 24-hour round the care. It would require a ventilator. She had a tracheostomy and things of that sort. And I really, honestly, I built my whole life around being this caregiver, being a registered nurse, being a NICU nurse and a labor and delivery nurse. And when I got married, I went to have my baby, and I got pregnant so easily. However, just 2 weeks before my mom gave birth to her baby, my first, I lost my pregnancy at the same gestational weeks. And I think that it destroyed me because for multiple reasons. I was so close in age with my sister, my first child. But number two, I'm a registered nurse. I'm a NICU nurse. I do labor and delivery. I'm level 3. I save babies who are incompatible with life every single day. And I had no clue that I was at risk, that the signs were present all along. And it really broke me. I went on short-term disability. It took me a while. I broke down before I built myself up and had the breakthrough to put myself back together, and then want to even begin to help other women know what that looks like and begin helping them create healthier lifestyles.
Wow, that's definitely a lot that you have been through. And I think, as kind of we were talking about before, that I think a lot of us take that pain and turn it into some kind of purpose, some way to help other people.
Absolutely.
So is that what then inspired you to create Love Serve Warm?
Absolutely, absolutely. I felt like after I suffered my pregnancy loss as a registered nurse, I didn't have a place to go to put myself back together. I felt like I got this kind of feedback from my family and friends that you just shouldn't share the loss, right? It's not pleasant conversation. And I was really told to like keep it shut and like close my mouth as much as I was hurting. And all I wanted to do was scream out loud. All I wanted to do was scream from the rooftops that I was hurting, that I could not go back to work and deliver babies because I had imposter syndrome, because I thought that they could look at me and see that I was no longer with child, and they would know that I was no longer this nurse that I had pretended to be for all these years. And really more importantly, I found that there was nowhere to put myself back together. No, no information about PCOS at the time. And I just remember like crying in the middle of the night and like in the pitch black, just begging God, how could you do this to me? Like, how could you leave me like childless? And I remember making him the promise, like, if you would give me a baby, if you let me be that Pinterest mom that I dream about, I would take so many women on this journey with me. I will show them exactly what I did, but you got to fulfill that. You've got to fulfill that for me, because I can't go on in life like this, broken in this way. And I don't even know how, but the pieces just started to come together.
It's really interesting how that happens. And I remember having, because we had a loss too, and I remember having, the same thoughts like, God, like, why are you doing this to me? And it makes you question, like, did I deserve this? Am I a bad person? Like, surely I did something to cause this, right? I mean, I think it just brings on all those feelings of guilt.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like no one talks about this, about pregnancy loss or infertility. And so a lot of us women just assume that it is something that our bodies will be naturally able to do when the time comes. And even as a NICU nurse, I have met parents who are mortified to know that I even exist. To mortified to know that there is even a department of the hospital that specializes in this, as if there was no sort of education in in their obstetric office. They were not told in the least bit that this is a possibility. So I just feel like we have to have these conversations, not only for the women who have had the experience, but for the women who will come to know the experiences, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like every time, you go through pregnancy, especially if you've never been through loss or never had a baby in the NICU or anything like that, you just think, okay, I get pregnant, 9 months later, I give birth, and then 2 days later, I go home with my baby. And, like that's just not how it happens for so many people. And I mean, to me, I'm surprised to hear that people didn't even know it existed, like that's crazy to me.
Absolutely. There's so much talk of a mother baby, labor and delivery nurse. But when it comes to NICU and when it comes to perinatal ER, the two specialties that I spent over a decade in, no one knows they exist. Like, what do you mean you work in an emergency room just for pregnant women? Yeah, like that's just
Like,
what
did
I
you
do.
think pregnant women don't have emergencies ever?
Right? And it's just, over time, it just really became like, is this information like purposely withheld from us? Like, why don't we have the education that we need to even begin to understand what we are at risk for?
Right.
What are the potential, what we will be facing when we walk into the hospital, right? We should be just as educated on if our birth plan goes right, to if our birth plan doesn't. And I feel like a lot of the times, based on so many things, broken healthcare system, everything else, there's just not the education, and there's just this underlying narrative that we're just supposed to know. But who's supposed to tell us?
Yes, I agree. It's just all these things. And, I know that they don't want to like scare people like, oh, you could lose your baby at 40 weeks. You could lose your baby after birth. Like I understand that. But at the same time, then when you're the one it happens to, you're just so unprepared and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to expect. Like nobody taught you about that.
Correct. And I think that even further, no one talks about the guilt and the sheer mental circus you go through when you finally do get pregnant again. And it is like you don't know if you can breathe. You don't know if you can celebrate. You don't know if you can share to your friends, to your family. You don't know if you can you don't know if you can even enjoy the pregnancy because you don't know how long you're going to have it. And I felt like
Exactly.
everything, my point of view was so negative in that pregnancy. And I felt like I held my breath until I gave birth, until I delivered. And it wasn't until I saw him that I believe that I even acknowledged that it was a possibility that motherhood could happen, because I was so numb to the experience. I didn't want to allow myself to get too overjoyed, no matter how far along it was.
Mhm.
It's like something that keeps stealing from you. It doesn't go away. It kind of like stays with you and kind of robs some of the happiness from your next pregnancy.
It definitely does. I mean, I had the same experience as you. Just every day I was so anxious. Like, you'd see the ultrasound, you'd be like, okay, everything's fine. And then an hour later, I'm like, but what if it's not now? Like she could already be gone and I wouldn't even know. And it's just like that constant fight in your head. And you're right. It just takes away so much of the joy that we could have had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember going back to work and just being like, okay, so where do women go to put themselves together? Like, this is NICU. Women didn't know about this. Surely there's a place for women who have lost babies, and I just don't know. So could someone just point me in that direction, and I'll put myself back together. I'll be back, I promise. And when I was met with, what? There's no place. You go back to work. You
Like,
you
what?
I'm like, what?
I
I'm
just
like,
be normal again? Like, what?
right? I just go back to delivering premature infants like nothing. And I remember that was just so incredibly difficult for me. And I was thinking, wow, as a registered nurse, I work in a level 3 NICU with the best doctors. If I can't find the resources, what are other women who have no clue of healthcare? They have no access to, what are they doing? Who are they talking to? Who is giving them love? And that's when I knew. I was like, I wanted to create a space in the internet where I could serve love, where I could bridge that gap in the healthcare system, and I could talk about PCOS, and I could talk about infertility. I could talk about women's health and menstrual, and just all of the things that I felt like we're robbed of knowing in our womanhood. And it's been this mission ever since, right? And it's still an ongoing mission, because yesterday's truth is unfortunately not today's truth, right? And so it's an ongoing lifestyle change, truly. And every day I go like peeling off another layer of this onion, to get back to like the true essence of me, and natural and healthy hormones, and all of that other good stuff.
Yeah, I agree definitely. There's just so much lacking in what we know about our own bodies, about people with PCOS. I also have PCOS, so I know all the fun joys of that. And oh my gosh, until I had trouble getting pregnant, I didn't realize, that how to track my cycles, like how to do any of this stuff. You're just taught have sex, you get pregnant, use birth control. Like that's all. And it's not like you don't know that there's only certain days you could get pregnant or how to tell when you're ovulating or how to tell like any of this stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that the most vile narrative that we can have in our capitalistic society is that cycle tracking only serves the purpose of fertility. It is like, oh my God, we need to be cycle tracking for so many other things, for our mental health, for osteoporosis, for the health of our bones, right? For so many other things into menopause, right? And so it's just very unfortunate that these things are not taught to us, that birth control is often the burden of the woman, even though
Yeah.
she can only get pregnant 5 days out the month. It's like,
Right.
It's truly like, it's truly a lack of education, the people will perish. Because it's truly like I read this amazing book, I think I just have it behind me, called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And she talks about like how we have so much war, so much famine, everything else, because women are not at the front. We're not the leaders of our society. We're not running things. And I believe that when women truly become educated, when we have these conversations, when we regain our positions as leaders, that these things will no longer exist, right? These systems in place will no longer exist, even our whole healthcare system. Most of
Mhm.
it is based off of the research of men,
Yeah.
right? Of men. And so we're not even taking account, the have 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That was based off of male. That didn't take into account any hormone health or anything else. So I feel like as women come to know, we come to kind of like regain our health, regain control of the conversation, we will slowly begin to create this necessary change. But the first thing is the awareness, having these conversations to even know what needs to be changed amongst and healthcare and for women in general.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I mean, women's healthcare is definitely lacking in a lot of areas. And I think you're right that, we need women who are up there helping make the policy, setting the important things. And we just don't have a lot of that.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's not a conversation that's had often enough. I was recently on a podcast episode with a woman from Australia, and her experience was that she found out she had PCOS, and the doctor threatened her with, we've got to have nutritional education, nutritional counseling. If not, you're going to have a stillbirth. We need an early glucose test. And she came into the podcast so annoyed. And I was like so proud of her doctor, like, if we could have a little bit of that in the US, we
Yes.
could even let women know having PCOS puts you at this risk for gestational diabetes. We need to do the glucose test early. You are at risk for a stillbirth, right? Even just knowing that information, how that would change someone, the way they go about their pregnancy. And I truly believe that the reason we don't have access to that information is because our healthcare system is reactive instead of being proactive.
Yeah.
And this is the consequence of having a healthcare system that is for profit, right? It's because, and I say this from point, I went to law school to study medical health law, right? And I thought that I was really going to change the world. I thought I was going to break down the Medicaid system and get my baby girl all the services she needed. And I realized that the tips of the scales, they tip to what's most profitable, not what's most right.
Just really sad.
And I mean, really sad to learn. I mean, I've spent I have serious debt from that law degree, and I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I want to work with, I never want to be in a situation where I'm representing someone with more money and we're going against someone who is right in theory, but right. And so when you look at healthcare from that perspective and you realize you need the ICD-10 codes, right? You need to have a diagnosis before you can even get the assessment that you need. It's like we've allowed the United States to become a system where we're being poisoned, and then they create the systems to help get us back to good health,
Or they
right?
decide they don't want to cover it, and then you get nothing after you get that diagnosis.
Absolutely. And so we've really got to be clear. I feel like this is the time where we have to have these conversations, and we've got to take back control. We've got to stand up as women, as the women of our households, right? As the women in the world, the women in our community, we have to, and even the childless women, right? I feel like they serve purpose as aunties, as leaders, right? We all are affected by the capitalist society, and we all have to speak up. The momless women, the women who are moms, like we all have to speak up for the embedment of the universe that we want to live in, because right now fertility rates are tanking all across the world, and there's no outrage, right? Women are not fertile, men are not fertile. Autism is at like a 3-time fold, right? And it's like, what are we doing? How are we going to begin fighting back?
And it's crazy to me that nobody points out these things. Shouldn't, like you said, shouldn't that be a concern that fertility rates are going down? I mean, I saw the number went up recently to was it one in or went down to 1 in 6 instead of 1 in 8, or I mean,
Well,
that's
I think
kind of a
that,
big deal.
yeah, I think that the issue here is that the people in power are benefiting from the situation, right? I can tell you that IVF clinics they have record-breaking profits. They have more infertile women that they've ever seen, right? So there is no push for them to end the issue of infertility. There is no push for them to educate women on the risk factors of miscarriage and pregnancy loss when they benefit from the contrary.
Which
And
is
I think
really sad.
that's the
That
truth.
makes me so sad to hear that, you know?
It is very, very sad. And someone asked me, they said recently, it was a affiliate for one of the supplements. They said, I'm going to an IVF clinic. Are you is that your competition? And I answered, not at all. The same way that someone to climb Mount Everest, they need some sort of chaperone, is the same way I consider myself to someone with IVF, right? Lifestyle changes should be first and center, should not be after and a thought after, right? IVF should be left for women who have tried to create lifestyle changes. They have tried to take control of their health. They have tried to physically identify the root cause of their inovulation or their infertility and address it naturally, because a lot of times it is some environmental, some inflammatory, something going on that could have been addressed. And it's usually not, because it's most profitable for it not to be.
And I think, again, it goes back to the lack of education that we don't even know to look for these things. Like I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 16. They said, here's some birth control and come back when you want to get pregnant. Basically, all I was told was you might have trouble getting pregnant. No one told me about certain types of exercise, food changes. No one told me about the mental health side of it that comes along with it. It's just, here's some birth control. See you later. And that's like the extent of my education on it.
Yeah. And again, even when we think of that, we think about how that benefits the providers, right? That silences all of your symptoms, right? And then that creates the ultimate perfect IVF storm. Because when you're finally ready to get pregnant, you have not ovulated for 5, 10, 15 years, right? And when you get off the pill, you need to go look for more specialized care. So I don't think it was created intentionally to be as such, but I think that over the years, because of the information that has come out and the lack of change in our healthcare system, it has created a predatory space for women of childbearing age to get their needs addressed. And it creates a situation where doctors benefit from gaslighting women, benefit from silencing women's symptoms, because they will benefit from the the larger treatment plan necessary in the end.
Yeah, so many stories I've heard of women like not being listened to. Like they're saying, I know something's wrong. I know something's wrong. And oh no, you're fine. Like, or, even female doctors telling other women, like, oh, this is just what you deal with. This is what we deal with as women. And it's like, but that's not how it should be.
And that was my experience. I started to have like a problem, just I felt cramped. I don't know. I would call it mom intuition. And the doctors kept telling me, you're a NICU nurse. It's all in your mind. You are. And so I started to believe that it was all in my mind, to the point that the day that I lost my pregnancy on December 26th, the day after Christmas, I drove an hour away because I swore that my baby just needed some fluids and I just needed to get to a hospital that would listen to me. So I was like, if I go outside of my hospital system to a different hospital system, I'm a new patient. They definitely got to check me out. And they checked me all right. They found out that my baby no longer had a heartbeat, right? And then because they weren't my hospital system, they had to discharge me and I had to go home pregnant and then follow up with my hospital system, right? So that that broke me. That broke me, and Christmas is never the same for me, right? That experience broke me, and it's just I could say so much about that. I know that it's a topic of, it's a topic of it's just a hot topic right now, and it's one that has affected me so personally. But I will say that, there just has to be major changes.
Yeah, and I just wonder, when you talk about going to study the medical law and then, just deciding like I can't do this, I just wonder how many other people are like you that think the same thing. Like all the people that hope to make change and then realize they're as a single person, I can't make the change or the impact that I want to make, you know?
Oh, I think that right now we are seeing burnout in record numbers from nurses, from healthcare workers, right? I was a college nursing instructor. I taught maternity and I taught pediatrics. And that was before COVID. And even then, things were really, I'll be honest, I left because I had to pass a kid who could not count respirations. And as a mom of a child on a ventilator and who has had 36 surgeries at the local children's hospital, I was not going to pass someone who was incapable of being a healthcare provider. And I was told by my dean that that kid would be passed anyway. Okay. So I left my job, right? And that was the stage of nursing before COVID. To see nursing after COVID, where most nurses are learning from YouTube, right? It's like the healthcare system is really, really, it's really on its last leg right now. I mean, I can give you, just as a parent, right, going through special needs. I have to take my girl to the hospital every Tuesday to change the Broviac line. I can tell you that I run into the most egotistical, cockiest nurses with the least amount of experience, and it is so scary. It is absolutely scary because if me myself as a registered nurse with 15 years of experience, I am still fighting to advocate with all of the knowledge and how well spoken I am, then what is the mom who has another special needs child? What is she saying that she doesn't know how to advocate for herself? She doesn't know the numbers, the emails to contact, right? It's really unfortunate. It's really, and nurses are burning out in record numbers. I remember going to work, and I remember me and my girlfriend, we would cry for 30 minutes before the start of our shift just because we didn't know like what was coming. We would go home and we would drive home in the car with no music, no radio. Just because you're so overstimulated from the machines going off, the ventilators, the beeps, the parents screaming. It is, it's difficult. And then to have been in that space where there was love present at one point and now there's no love in healthcare, I think it's difficult for anyone who has the ideology that they're going to go and create massive impact and massive change. I think it's absolutely heartbreaking. And I think that that's why our nurses are not lasting.
Yeah, and nurses were, especially the nurses, like during my loss, they were the most amazing people. And I always remember them. I don't really remember. I mean, I kind of remember the doctor, but it's the nurses that I remember. So the fact that that they're overworked and not appreciated and just all of these things, it's so sad to me. I mean, it's just there's so many amazing ones out there, and then there's all these people coming in and ruining it.
Yeah. And not only nurses, right? I feel like the teachers, I just feel like the caregivers of our society are just really suffering in today's time, right? We become a really profit driven. And I feel like the caregivers, they're just suffering in whatever capacity they hold. Not only, I don't want to just like isolate the nurses because we have so many women in society who foster and mother society, right? But I feel like on a grand scale, we're all just really, we're all just suffering, right? I mean, so many people who go into healthcare and law and all these, right, to create the change and realizing that individually we can't no matter how bad we want to. I think it's triggering for us. I think that a lot of people are struggling, and I think that our system is going to have to completely break down, unfortunately, before it gets built back up, right? It's like if it's not broken, don't fix it. And as long as it continues to produce income for the people at the top, I don't think that it will be changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, because they don't see it as broken, right? Because for them, it's not. It's working perfectly like they wanted it to.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? IVF doctors are maxed out in their clinics. There are like dialysis kidney centers popping up on all the, right? They are benefiting. They're benefiting.
It's so frustrating to me that even in my case that, like I said, I didn't know anything about the diet changes I could make. I didn't know about any of that. We did acupuncture, which was beneficial, but yeah, I didn't do IVF, but we did other fertility treatment. And again, no one ever said like, hey, you could be making these diet changes, you could be doing these things over here. And I wish I had found that out while I was trying to get pregnant instead of later when I was done having kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, right? Going back, I was trying to peek over and find the book. I believe it's called Grain Brain, right? But however, it talks about how when the American Heart Association and the American Diabetes Association created the new food pyramid, diabetes rates tripled in the next 20 years. Could you imagine following the advice of your government and having diabetes rates triple and the government not do anything to offset this kind of it's so sad. And it kind of feels like an attack on the middle and lower class, right? Because it feels like clean clean beauty products and clean food products are only available to those who have an excess of abundance of money. And everyone else is fought to fight through endocrine disruptors and and products that are clearly not labeled safe for the general population.
And it's
And
things you don't know again because you just trust that what they're putting out is safe, you know, because isn't that what I mean, I know some like beauty products and stuff aren't as regulated, but even like stuff that the FDA approves, it's like, shouldn't they not approve some of the things that they're approving, you know?
absolutely. And we know that the FDA has been bought out in the United States. And we know because when we look at what the FDA regulates and what's regulated in other countries, and what's allowed here, it's like, why do we allow our children to have red dye 40? All of these phthalates, right, in the prime drinks, all of these forever chemicals that will not only disrupt our children, but our little boys. And it's like, why are we allowing this? Why don't we have tighter legislation, right, for the food companies, right? I'm just, and if I can get like a little bit nerdy here, and like might be a little bit too nerdy, like just as a NICU nurse, like when you look at the nutritional data for mice, right, and versus babies, and why is this important? Because all of our medications are tested on a good rat population. So we need a good rat population to sustain the human population. And so for that reason, they have a special diet for rats. And do you know that the rats get more nutrients, more vitamins, more supplements than recommended for our newborn babies? Because we need the rat population to be more, we need them. We don't need the babies. And when we look at the two, it's like, how could we justify the formula? The lack of right? How could we just heavy metals in the formulas? How can we justify this? But we have stricter contingencies for the foods that the rats get, the mice
Yeah,
get.
that makes zero sense.
So it's like I do believe that the information is out there. I do believe that I don't believe that anything is what we're talking is not taboo. I just believe that it's not in the best interest of profit of those at the top. And therefore, the information will continue to be like a muted whisper
Yeah.
because it just doesn't serve the common narrative.
And you know, if you go online on certain places, like all you'll see is people, it's kind of one-sided, you know, so like taking the red dye, for instance, you know, I see that pop up a lot on people like, hey, we need to avoid this, you know, but then you get all these people like, oh, you're overreacting, you're being crazy. There's no scientific evidence, you know, you get a lot of that putting down the concerns.
Yeah. I think that that comes from people who are kind of like, they kind of become numb, right, to the situation. And it's kind of like this overwhelming feeling of if everything in this world is going to cause me unjust, like it's going to make me sick, then I'm just not going to try to find a needle in a haystack. And I really think that's where that kind of attitude comes from,
Mm.
because it can really feel like in some ways, everything is contributing to cancer or hormonal imbalances, or right? It can feel like everything is problematic. So I can understand and almost empathize with those people in a way that they're like, give me a break. Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to the supermarket. If you're telling me what's in my supermarket is poisonous, that's all I've got. Right. I've
Yeah.
got
I mean,
this.
I do understand that. It is overwhelming.
Right. So it's very easy to develop that calloused mentality when you're at the like when you're at the receiving end that's not like the most beneficial. When that's going to be a reality regardless of it. So you have to create some sort of defense mechanism, because in reality, everyone wants the best. In the reality, who doesn't want to avoid toxic chemicals and things so that they can, right, they can live the longest, they can live the best quality of life. The reality is that that's just not everyone's truth.
Right. I know it's more doable for some people than others for various reasons, but I think that there's at least one or two things that all of us could cut out or change, even just starting with one little thing, because it's overwhelming to think I have to cut out everything I use or everything I eat.
Absolutely. And in my program, specifically the Healthy Pieces Protocol, I do not believe in restrictions. The first thing we do is start to work on your mindset, right? To understand, who do you want to be and who are you now? And we have to reverse engineer the space in between the gap, right? Because a lot of time people want to do things and I'm like, is that realistically sustainable for you? Losing 20 pounds in a week? Like, right? We have to be realistic about the type of lifestyle that we want to create, right? About making changes that are so small, about creating the smallest speed bumps that kind of snowball into a natural consequence of healing. And we have to be very intentional about not creating more than a 1% change, because our subconscious mind will not be able to handle it. It's like the devil that I know is better than the one that I don't, right?
Mhm.
So we have to keep that in mind whenever we're seeking to create change, that the spirit of procrastination will hit us, right? When we're trying to get out of where we usually are, right? And that's why we have to be committed to creating a lifestyle change, but also doing it so slowly, right? Okay, like I don't know, I'm going to go from soda to diet soda. And that's my thing. And then maybe it'll take me some time to go from diet soda to a flavored seltzer water, right? But those are the small, realistic changes that will last a lifetime. Not waking up one morning and saying, I'm not having any soda, any fruit juices, just green water. And that's not realistic,
Yeah.
right? So we've got to give ourselves grace.
Then we
And
get mad about it and give up.
yeah, it took us decades, right, to get here. Habits that we have instilled over years, some of them generational, right? Generational forms of eating, right? We pass down these cultural norms. It's going to take you a little while to unravel them. And that's why we need support, we need accountability, and we need to give ourselves grace,
Mhm.
because it's a process.
Yeah, it's funny how I mean, not funny, but something that I've dealt with my entire life has been anxiety. And I didn't realize that it is also tied to PCOS because it's one of those things that, again, they don't teach you. And I'm just like, I thought this was how everybody lived, you know? And it's not.
Yeah, and that's one of my most viral posts. I'm talking like, are you anxious or are you just not ovulating? Right? Because progesterone is like that is a Xanax, right? It's like nature's Xanax. And so often, like I say, like if you don't take what's in the dark and bring it to the light and make it known, it will rule your life and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
Right? I have clients who are like, I don't talk to my mom. We just don't get along. I'm just too. And after they have balanced their hormones, they're like, she's not so bad. She says I'm not so bitchy, And it's like, right, we have to bring what's in the dark to light. Otherwise, we will unconsciously allow it to rule our life and we will call it fate, right? So many of my personality traits no longer exist. I was not me when I was hungry. I needed to grab a Snicker. I'm not that person anymore once I balance my blood sugars and I don't reach that deep down that makes me become like silent and mean. Like I'm not a lot of the personality traits that I thought was me, they were my hormones imbalanced. They weren't even me. I'm so different now. Right? So again, the awareness has to come, before the improvement could come, right? And so often the guilt comes up, the shame comes up, right? Because we feel like, oh my God, I should have known this, right? But it's so important to give yourself grace, right? To give yourself so much grace on this journey because it's so incredibly difficult, but it's some that all of us is going to take at one point or another.
I'm curious because, one thing with PCOS is that there tend to be weight gain or like trouble losing weight or things like that. And one thing that has really frustrated me from a lot of people is that doctors always blame weight first. Well, if you would just lose weight, this would happen. Or have you dealt with a lot of either with yourself or with people you work with who have faced that obstacle?
Yeah, so with myself, I was at one point almost 50 pounds overweight, right? But I had lived my life this way. And that's why I say that a lot of the issues that women have, they are generational issues. They are cultural norms that they're carrying with them, right? So I was eating, I was just always overweight, but it really hit me during puberty. My stomach started to protrude. My stomach became increasingly big, to which I almost looked pregnant. Now, I did lose the weight, but what I want to say about the weight loss in women is that weight gain is a natural consequence. It is not the reason why you have PCOS. The weight gain is a consequence of PCOS, right? I like to describe weight gain with PCOS, and I live in Florida, so it just makes the most sense. It's like an AC thermostat, right? Your body is supposed to be keeping, I don't know how you like it, but I like my house like an ice box. So I keep my house at a nice solid 72. Okay. If I was to come into my home and my house, my thermostat says 78 degrees and it was hot and muggy in here, I would not throw out the house. Okay. I would run to the AC thermostat and say, oh my God, this thing is broken. I need to fix this because it's not regulating the internal thermostat that I have set for my house. Okay. When women are struggling with weight gain and PCOS, it means that your internal thermostat, AKA your hormones, they are not working properly to regulate your body weight at a certain weight, right? I feel my best at a nice 135, 140. If I feel that I'm creeping up to 150, 160, and my eating habits haven't changed, it's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going to let a doctor gaslight me into believing that I might be sneaking snacks in somewhere else. I'm going to start to question, hey, that internal thermostat is not keeping that temperature set in the way that I like. It's you get what I'm saying? So I think that a lot of times our healthcare system is so broken and that there's no time in that 15 minutes to even give you these analogies, to explain it to you. So it's much easier to push it to, I apologize. Just most times it's much easier to push it to something else, right? To push the it's much easier to put the blame on something else, right? And when healthcare providers put the blame of weight gain onto other things, it opens up this opportunity for healthcare providers to give you a bag of prescription medications that you will likely never be able to detox from, right? The biggest problem that I find with women with PCOS is that they complain of thyroid issues. And I ask them, was it the thyroid that caused the PCOS or the PCOS that caused the thyroid? Because once you become on thyroid medications, you're on thyroid medications for life, right? And we understand that PCOS has the ability to affect your thyroid hormones. So I always tell women before you set yourself to a lifetime of thyroid hormones, a lifetime of metformin, before you sign up for Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, all of these other things that will break, they will break you, right? I have clients who have their 16-year-old daughters come to calls with me and they're like, please, my daughter can't stop gaining weight. And I'm like, first things first is cut out the diet, cut out the negative self-talk, right? Let's be honest, we're not fighting ourselves, we're fighting something else. So I think that that's the first step. I think that they benefit from that. Putting you on metformin, letrozole, Clomid, now Ozempic, right? Ozempic is like #1 treatment for PCOS. So the healthcare providers are benefiting because before it was metformin, now it's Ozempic. There will always be a Band-Aid for your issue, right? So women really have to make the decision for themselves. And I'm all about women empowerment and body literacy. So I'm very honest. You have to be honest with yourself. Are you in the space where you can do this naturally? Because if you're not, do me a favor and take the crutch. Take the crutch, until you are able, until you get to the space where you can do what you can. You do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do, right? And I just want to say that because so often women get slack. I'm taking the birth control. I was bleeding. I didn't know what else to do. You do the best that you can do, right? But I feel like definitely our doctors are benefiting from that. I feel like capitalism in itself benefits from telling women that they're not enough. If you have straight hair, you need it curly. If you have small breasts, you need them big. If you have a little butt, you need it big. If it's big, you need it small, right? Because what would happen if we all woke up one day and decided that we were enough? How many businesses would crumble behind women waking up and deciding that we had enough?
That's a very powerful statement. It is. I mean, you think of all the clothing stores, the makeup stores, the hair salons, things like that. And, some of it, yes, we do it for us. I'm not saying everything we do is for other people, but, a lot of it is because we feel like we have to wear the latest fashion or, look like this celebrity or just, whatever the reason is.
And who are putting these unrealistic expectations on women in our society? It's not the women. It's the people that benefit from us. It's the people that are poisoning us. It's the people that create these. It is a vicious cycle. And it's like once we become aware, we can create the first steps to breaking free from it. And I feel like we are doing that. There are so many amazing brands that I get to work with, and I'm usually the one scouting them out because it's very hard to find them. And when I get them, I promote them and I want people to know. So there are people who are building their little corners in the internet, right? They're trying to create natural brands, natural products, right? Dr. Bronner's is one of my absolute favorites. Okay, they don't work with small brands, okay, but they do all kind of business grants, scholarships. I love Dr. Bronner's for the way they treat their employees. Like they are one of the companies who's out there doing the work. So I believe that the change is coming. I believe the change is coming, and I'm just here to facilitate it. And I'm just here to hold the hand of the women who are ready to embrace the change and make the lifestyle changes necessary.
Yeah, and you're right. It is kind of hard to find those brands sometimes because those aren't always the ones that are, at eye level on the store shelf or, the ones talked about. But if we could all somehow coordinate and learn to buy the best brands and stop supporting the other brands, that'd be great, right?
Yeah, and I think that we're slowly getting there. I feel like we're slowly getting there, right? We're becoming more educated as consumers. We're having more convers, right? I truly feel like we're getting there. Food Babe, I think her name is Food Babe. She's another like large advocate. She's going against Kellogg, asking for petition to change the breakfast cereals that are marketed to our young children. So there are so many amazing women out there who are doing the work, and I'm just so proud to even like consider myself a part of them.
I think it's amazing that, that there, like you said, that there's so many people out there and they're all in different areas, doing different things in slightly different ways, but they're all super meaningful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
nice
and
to just be part of something bigger.
right? I'm just like so excited to, for music, I was like, I wasn't born in the 80s and the 90s. I wasn't born in the right time for the fashion. And it's like nice to be right on, right on par for like for something major like this and to be a part of it, you know? So I'm excited to what's to come. I'm excited to see what the world will look like when my daughter grows up in it. And hoping that we've left it as a result of these conversations just a little bit more of a better place.
Yeah, and that's kind of my motivation too. I have three daughters, two living, one in heaven, but yeah, those two, and I have a son as well, and I want to make it better for all of them. So if people wanted to get in touch with you or connect with you, where would they go to do that?
Yes, they can find me at my website, www.loveservedwarm.com. And they can also find me on all social media platforms at loveservedwarm.com.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and all this amazing information with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tianna, for sharing your story with us. I know it can seem overwhelming when you think about all the changes that you feel might need to happen in your life. As Tianna said, we don't have to change everything overnight. I was actually really inspired by this entire conversation and started making some small changes in my own life that are hopefully leading to healthier habits. These are simple things like making sure I get at least 7,000 steps a day, or that I make sure I drink all my water. It makes me feel like I'm taking steps to be healthier, but in a manageable way that doesn't overwhelm me. In the past, I tried to change too much at once. This just led to me feeling overwhelmed and then giving up. So if you're wanting to make changes, just do it slowly, one thing at a time. Whether it's for your mental health or physical health, there is always something small that you can start with. And I always find it motivating, and then I want to keep adding on more and more habits. I hope this concept helps you as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more lost and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.